The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hotel ballroom cast fractured, diamond-bright light across every linen-draped table, gilded champagne flute, and polished, performative smile in the room. The air hummed with the low, thrumming murmur of 100 overlapping conversations, the crisp clink of glassware, and the faint, sweet tang of chilled canapes, aged champagne, and expensive floral perfume clinging to every tailored suit and silk gown. It was the annual awards gala for Dusk and Dawn Creative, the night the entire regional advertising industry turned out to see which campaigns would be crowned, which rising talents would be anointed, and which names would be etched into the year's Creative Hall of Fame. For most people in the room, it was a night of celebration, of networking, of posing for photos and trading business cards over flutes of sparkling wine. For Ethan Voss, it was the end of 7 years of quiet loyalty, 7 years of swallowed pride, 7 years of letting other people stand in the light of work he had written in the dark. He stood near the very back of the room, his fingers curled loosely around a flute of brut champagne he had not yet touched, the cold glass seeping slowly through the fabric of his suit sleeve. He was 7 years deep into this job, 7 years removed from the day he'd walked away from a secure, well-paid role at a top 4A agency to build something from nothing with Clara Bennett, 7 years of bleary all-nighters, last-minute client revisions, last-minute panic attacks, and quiet, uncelebrated victories no one else ever saw. He knew every face in this room, every unspoken office rule, every carefully curated narrative the company sold to clients and press alike. Tonight, he was about to watch that carefully polished narrative crack wide open, and he was the one holding the hammer. On the raised stage at the front of the ballroom, Clara Bennett stood tall and regal in a deep emerald velvet gown, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek, immaculate chignon, every inch the poised, celebrated founder and CEO the industry had fallen in love with. Beside her, Lila Hart, 8 months into the job, 26 years old, with a manicure that cost more than some intern's weekly grocery budget, twirled a delicate Van Cleef and Arpels necklace between her perfectly polished fingers and scanned the crowd like a queen surveying her domain. Her gaze drifted slowly across the tables, skipped over the junior staff and vendors, and landed directly on Ethan, tucked away in the back. Her lips tugged upward in a slow, unapologetic smirk, bright and sharp as shards of broken glass held up to the light. It was the smirk of someone who knows they've won and wants the loser to know it too. Quentin Marsh, the group creative director, stepped up to the microphone and cleared his throat, adjusting his tie with one nervous hand. The room fell quiet, all eyes turning toward the stage, the murmur of conversation dying down to a soft hush. "The annual Diligence Award," he said, his voice steady but strained through the speakers, "goes to Ethan Voss. Bonus, $1,200. Silence. A beat of stunned, heavy silence stretched across the entire ballroom, thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Ethan could feel the weight of dozens of eyes snapping toward him all at once, colleagues who'd pulled all-nighters by his side, who'd watched him draft 17 versions of a single script on 4 hours of sleep, who knew exactly how much of the company's best, most award-winning work bore his quiet fingerprints. They looked shocked, then uncomfortable, then quickly away, as if making eye contact with him would get them in trouble. Someone stared intently at their phone screen, scrolling through nothing. Another twisted a pen between their fingers so fast it blurred. No one clapped. No one said a word. Even the waitstaff paused mid-pour, as if they could feel the tension in the air. Quentin continued, as if he hadn't noticed the quiet, electric tension coiling through every corner of the room. And the Gold Award for Campaign of the Year, with a $92,000 performance bonus, goes to Lila Hart for the Urban Nomad Project. A smattering of polite, hesitant applause rippled through the room, but most people were too busy exchanging wide-eyed, disbelieving glances, too busy whispering behind their hands and napkins. Everyone in the industry knew the Urban Nomad Project. It had been everywhere that year, billboards towering over downtown streets, viral reels looping on every social media feed, think pieces in every major creative publication, think pieces calling it the defining campaign of the decade. It had put Dusk and Dawn on the map for a whole new generation of clients, tripled their inbound leads, turned Clara into a household name in advertising circles. And everyone who actually worked inside the company knew who had really written every line of it. Lila glided toward the stage in her scarlet-soled stilettos, her sequined gown trailing behind her like a peacock's iridescent tail. She moved slowly, deliberately, soaking up every eye on her, every murmur of admiration. She took the heavy crystal trophy from Clara's hands, turned to face the crowd, and lifted it high above her head, so the chandelier light caught its hundreds of facets and sent blinding white streaks darting across the walls and ceiling. Her smile was bright, triumphant, utterly unashamed, like she truly believed she had earned every bit of the glory she was bathing in. Clara clapped her on the shoulder, her gaze drifting over the crowd until it locked with Ethan's, cold and steady. Her voice, warm and smooth and impossible to argue with, carried through the microphone to every corner of the room. "Ethan, you're a founding member of this team, a true veteran of our craft. Keep mentoring the new talent, keep lifting people up. Next year, I'm looking forward to seeing your name on that very stage." Every eye in the room snapped back to Ethan all at once, sharp and hot as 1,000 tiny needles pricking at his skin. He stood there, holding that thin, crisp red envelope with the $1,200 bonus inside, and felt his fingertips go ice-cold, even as a slow, burning fire coiled low in his stomach, spreading up through his chest and into his throat. 7 years. 7 years ago, he and Clara had quit their stable agency jobs together, hauled a couple of wobbly folding desks and a beat-up second-hand couch into a drafty basement office with a leaky ceiling, and dreamed of building the best creative boutique in the country. She had the ambition, the client connections, the fearless, magnetic charm that could sell snow to a polar bear. He had the words, the ideas, the quiet, stubborn ability to turn a half-baked client request into something that made people stop scrolling, something that stayed with them long after they'd closed the app or driven past the billboard. "Ethan," she'd said, leaning against that wobbly desk, her eyes bright with unfiltered excitement, "we're going to make something that matters. Something that outlasts us." He thought about that first brutal winter, when the ancient radiator in the basement office gave out completely and the temperature inside dropped to just above freezing. They'd worked in thick parkas and fingerless wool gloves for 2 whole weeks, drinking instant coffee that tasted like wet cardboard because they couldn't afford to fix the heater and couldn't afford to take a single day off. Clara had laughed until her breath fogged in the cold air and said, "This is the stuff they write magazine articles about. We'll laugh about this someday, when we're in the penthouse office." They had laughed about it once, a few years later at the holiday party in the sprawling garden villa, drinking $100 bottles of Pinot Noir and laughing about the old days like they were a charming story from someone else's life. Their very first client had come to them with a measly $7,000 budget and a wildly unrealistic demand for a viral video that would take the internet by storm. Ethan had pulled 4 straight all-nighters, drafted 17 completely different versions of the script, and tweaked every single line until it hummed. When the video dropped, it racked up 200 million views nationwide in less than a week. Overnight, Dusk and Dawn Creative was no longer just 2 people in a basement with a dream and a Wi-Fi connection. Their 3rd year, they'd pitched for the annual creative account of a major international automotive brand, the biggest pitch they'd ever gone for, the one that would make or break them. 3 days before the final presentation, Clara had been rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night with a ruptured appendix. Ethan had locked himself in a hotel conference room with the tiny, exhausted team for 48 straight hours, running through pitch decks until his eyes burned, refining talking points until he could recite them in his sleep, rewriting the core concept 3 times from scratch. They'd won the account, the one that changed everything, the one that turned a scrappy little boutique into a serious, major player in the industry. Their 5th year, the company moved into a stunning standalone garden villa on Huaihai Road, one of the city's most iconic, expensive streets. The team grew to 60 people, bright-eyed and ambitious. Annual revenue broke 8 figures. Clara made the Forbes 30 under 30 list, her face smiling from the cover of every business magazine. In her glossy acceptance speech, she thanked her incredible team, her visionary clients, the incredible era of creativity they were all lucky enough to live through. She didn't say his name. It was fine, he'd told himself back then, staring at the magazine cover in the office break room. They were partners. They didn't need public credit. They had trust. Trust was worth more than any magazine mention. But now? Now Lila Hart, who forwarded every client brief straight to overworked interns, who changed 3 commas in a finished deck and called it creative direction, who told Clara over lattes that the award-winning core concept had come to her in a hot shower, was walking away with $92,000 and a trophy that weighed more than his entire year of recognition. And that trophy, that Campaign of the Year award for the Urban Nomad Project? Every core concept, every communication strategy, every line of copy, every beat of the emotional arc, every single word on every billboard, all of it was his. Lila hadn't even been in the room when he drafted the first outline on a crumpled napkin. All she'd done was show up to the final client presentation, sit there for 2 hours looking pretty, and take the bow while the audience applauded. That line everyone quoted, the one that had been printed on billboards across the country, the one people got tattooed on their ribs, the one influencers captioned every travel post with, *, may every city hold a light that waits for you, *. He'd written it at 3 a.m. in a grimy 24-hour diner, right after his girlfriend of 4 years had walked out the door with a suitcase. She'd said she couldn't keep waiting for him to finish work, that she wanted a life that didn't revolve around client deadlines and last-minute revisions and canceled dinner plans. He'd sat there until dawn, staring at his cold, congealing hash browns, and scrawled that line on a paper napkin. It was the most personal thing he'd ever put into a campaign. It was a piece of his own broken heart, packaged up and sold to the world. And Lila had taken it. Had told a room full of teary-eyed clients it came to her while she was taking a bubble bath and thinking about her study abroad semester. Clara stepped off the stage, her expensive jasmine perfume drifting past Ethan in a soft, cloud-like wave as she walked by. She paused, turned her head just enough to speak out of the corner of her mouth, her voice low and smooth and commanding. "Come up to my suite after the gala. We need to talk about your contract." Ethan watched her walk away, her back straight and elegant as ever, Lila tucked into her arm, grinning like she'd already won the whole world and everything in it. His phone buzzed once in his suit pocket, a short, sharp vibration against his hip. He pulled it out, keeping it low at his side so no one could see the screen. A new email notification glowed up at him. Subject line, 743 audio files plus supporting documents, encrypted and scheduled for send. Delivery time, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan unclenched his fist, his nails leaving faint half-moon indentations in his palm. He set the thin red envelope down gently on the bone china plate beside him, the one with the uneaten smoked salmon canopy he'd forgotten all about. Then, under 100 curious, judgmental, bewildered stares, he stood up, adjusted his suit jacket, and walked calmly toward the side exit of the ballroom, his shoes making no sound on the thick carpet. He knew exactly what Clara wanted to talk about. Contract renewal. A lower base salary, higher, nearly impossible performance hurdles, fuzzier and fuzzier rules about who got credit for what work. Another year tied to the machine, feeding his best, most personal ideas to people like Lila, watching them walk away with the money, the fame, the credit he'd earned with every sleepless night and every broken relationship. The executive suite was on the 22nd floor of the hotel, quiet and carpeted, far away from the noise of the gala. Ethan walked down the empty hallway, his dress shoes sinking silently into the plush cream carpet, and rested his hand on the cold, polished metal doorknob. From inside, he could hear Clara's voice, warm and amused and completely unconcerned. "Don't worry about Ethan. He'll understand. He's not the type to make a fuss over things like this. He knows how the industry works." Ethan took a slow, deep breath, the cold hotel air filling his lungs. He turned the handle and pushed the door open. This had all come to a head a week earlier, though in truth, it had started 3 years before that, with one overheard sentence and a choice he'd made in a split second. It was 11 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday, and the lights of the Huaihai Road villa were flickering out one by one, floor by floor, until only the hallway night lights and Ethan's desk lamp remained. He sat at his desk, the cool blue glow of his monitor painting sharp, tired lines across his face, and lifted his head slowly from the keyboard. His neck let out a faint, protesting crack, loud in the quiet office. On the screen sat a finished pitch deck 120 slides long for the tastes of the South Cultural Tourism Project. The core concept, homesickness on a plate, the economics of nostalgia, had come to him 3 days prior, halfway through a lukewarm takeout dinner of fried rice and egg drop soup. It was good. He knew it was good. It would win them the account, and with it, a full year of steady, high-profile, meaningful work. The office was empty, save for him. The low, steady hum of the server room down the hall was the only sound, mixed with the distant, muffled honk of traffic from the street below and the soft patter of rain against the tall windows. He saved the file, adding his usual, obsessive suffix to the file name, v11_final_evos. He'd been labeling files that way for years, a habit from the early days when the server crashed regularly and they lost 3 days of work. Then he uploaded it to the shared server and typed a message in the project group chat, tagging Lila Hart. Final deck uploaded. For tomorrow's pitch, fill in the KL list and media budget breakdown on slide 117. Core creative is locked, good to present as is. Let me know if you have questions. He hit send, leaned back in his worn leather office chair, and rubbed the bridge of his nose hard with his thumb and forefinger. His eyes burned like he'd rubbed sand in them. He'd been working on this pitch for 2 weeks straight, pulling 12-hour days most of the time, sleeping on the office couch twice when the revisions ran too late. Down the hall, the warm golden light was still on in Clara's corner office, leaking out under the door. Ethan hesitated for a second, then stood up, stretching his stiff shoulders until they popped. He'd meant to talk to her about the upcoming contract renewal, about the rumors he'd heard of a company-wide restructuring, about the way Lila had been taking credit for more and more of his work lately, bragging to clients about ideas she'd never had. Maybe now, with the office quiet and empty, they could have an honest conversation, the way they used to in the old days. He walked down the quiet hallway, the polished wooden floor creaking softly under his socks. He'd kicked off his dress shoes hours earlier, his feet aching. The door to Clara's office was ajar, just a crack. Through the gap, he could see her leaning back on the plush leather couch, a half-empty glass of deep red wine on the marble coffee table in front of her. Lila sat across from her, leaning forward eagerly, holding her phone out to show Clara something on the screen. "This color palette is so much better than the last version," Clara said, her voice warm and approving, the same tone she used to use when she praised Ethan's work. "Your eye for this has really improved lately. You're picking it up so fast." "All thanks to you, Clara," Lila purred, leaning back with a bright, satisfied smile, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, and speaking of pitches, I've been brainstorming ideas for the auto client renewal next month. I wanted to run a few by you first, before I put anything in the shared folder." "Go on." "I'm curious. I was thinking we could do a series of short, intimate documentaries. Real people, not the polished corporate actors we usually use. Like a single mom driving for a rideshare to put her kid through elementary school, a retired couple driving cross-country for the first time after their last kid left home, a kid fresh out of college buying his very first car with his first paycheck. Raw, emotional, relatable stories. People connect with that way more than flashy car specs." Ethan froze in the hallway, his hand halfway to the door frame. That idea. That exact, word-for-word concept. He'd written that down in the locked internal creative bank a month earlier, a rough draft he'd been tinkering with on the side. Only 3 people in the whole company had access to that folder: him, Clara, and the head of strategy. He'd never mentioned it to Lila. Never even hinted at it. "That's a really strong angle," Clara said, nodding slowly, swirling her wine in the glass. Reminds me of Ethan's early work, actually. Grounded. Good human insight. Lila rolled her eyes, just a little, the way entitled teenagers do when they think no one is watching. With all respect, Clara, I feel like Ethan's work these days is a little too safe, you know? It doesn't go viral. All the biggest campaigns last year had edge, they had conversation starters, they had drama. Warm and heartfelt doesn't cut it anymore. It's boring. Gen Z doesn't care about heartfelt. Clara picked up her wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid inside, watching it spin. She was quiet for a beat, like she was thinking it over. His work on this tourism pitch, it's solid, well-crafted, but it doesn't pop. It doesn't have that viral spark. Execution will be fine, though, obviously. Put your framework together first, then have him polish the copy for you. He's good at that part. Got it, Lila said, her smile brightening, victorious. Don't worry, I'll be sure to ask for his input. I'm happy to learn from him. He's got great technical skills. Ethan stepped back, silent as a shadow, and walked away down the hallway, his feet making no sound on the wooden floor. Somewhere in the building, an old radiator clicked loudly, the sound echoing through the empty hall. He stopped by the kitchenette, leaned against the cold quartz counter, and stared at the wall for a long time. He wasn't even surprised, not really. Disappointed, yes. A hollow, tired, heavy kind of disappointment, the kind that settles deep in your bones after years of small cuts and quiet betrayals and little lies that add up until you can't ignore them anymore. He'd been here before. So many times before. He went back to his desk, knelt down, and unlocked the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, the one with the combination lock no one else knew the code to. He pulled out a plain, unmarked black external hard drive, the kind you could buy at any electronics store for $50. He plugged it into his computer, typed in the long encryption password, and opened the folder. 743 audio files, neatly labeled and organized by date. 3 years of recordings. 3 years of quiet, unobserved documentation. The earliest one was dated exactly 3 years prior, from a Monday morning team meeting. Clara's voice, bright and confident, ringing out across the conference room. Ethan is my most important partner. He's the creative soul of this company. Nothing we do happens without him. The most recent one was from the Friday before, late at night, long after everyone else had gone home. He'd been in Clara's office setting up the projector for an early morning investor call, and he'd left his phone recording on the edge of the desk, face down, hidden behind a stack of folders. Clara had said, Ethan's talent is undeniable, of course. But creative people only have so many good years, right? He's 35 now. His output, his speed, his relevance, it's all slipping. We need to build a new creative core, younger, more in touch with Gen Z, more digital native. Lila might not have the experience, but she has the internet instinct Ethan doesn't. That's worth more these days. The investor had asked, calm and businesslike, what are you going to do with him? He's a founder. He has skin in the game. He could cause trouble if he feels pushed out. Clara had paused for 2 full seconds, like she was choosing her words carefully. When his contract comes up, I'm restructuring his compensation completely. Switch him from a fixed salary to project-based pay with very aggressive performance metrics. Slowly pull him off all the core accounts, stick him on the small, boring stuff. If he gets frustrated and quits on his own, that's the best possible outcome. Clean. No drama. No severance fight. Ethan selected that clip, trimmed it clean and precise, and labeled it with the exact date, the location, the people present. He'd gotten very good at this over the years. Meticulous. Organized. Silent. Like a historian archiving evidence of a slow, quiet collapse. For 3 years, he'd been a quiet archivist, documenting every lie, every betrayal, every quiet plan to push him out of the company he'd helped build from nothing. It hadn't started out that way. It had been an accident, at first. A split-second decision. 3 years earlier, he'd been walking past the glass conference room with 2 mugs of freshly brewed coffee, one for him and one for Clara, when he'd heard his name through the closed door. He'd stopped, curious, because he'd thought she was in there alone with the client. Clara was talking to the CEO of a major retail client, her tone bright and proud and confident. The core concept for the Urban Nomad project was all Lila, from start to finish. Brilliant young mind, really. Ethan helped oversee the visual execution, of course, lent his expertise. We really believe in giving young talent room to lead, to spread their wings. Ethan had stood there, the heat of the coffee cups seeping into his palms through the ceramic, and stared at the wall outside the conference room. He felt like someone had poured a bucket of ice water down his back. Lila had been at the company for 3 months. 3 months. Her only contribution to the Urban Nomad project had been changing one line of headline copy on the final draft. Ethan had written, "May you start small and end somewhere extraordinary." Lila had opened the file, deleted that line, and typed, "Go chase the stars." The next day, at the weekly all-team creative meeting, Lila had stood up in front of everyone and told the whole room she'd stayed up all night writing that line, that it had come to her in a dream. Clara had praised her lavishly in front of the whole team, called her a rising star. Everyone had looked at Ethan. All his colleagues, all the people he'd worked side by side with for years. Waiting for him to say something. Waiting for him to call her out. He hadn't said a word. He'd just nodded and taken a sip of his coffee and let it go. That night, he'd turned on his phone's voice recorder before his next one-on-one with Clara. Just in case. Just of proof, if he ever needed it. One recording became 2, became 10, became 100. Every creative meeting Lila attended. Every private conversation where Clara promised him the world, then turned around and planned to push him out. Every client call where Lila presented his work as her own, flawlessly, like she'd written every word herself. At first, he'd told himself he was just protecting himself. That he'd never actually use them. That things would get better, that Clara would come to her senses, that Lila would eventually get found out, that the truth would come out on its own. But month after month, the lies piled higher and higher. The credit kept going to someone else. The respect he'd earned, the loyalty he'd given, kept getting chipped away, little by little, until there was barely anything left. 743 files. A vault of proof, sitting quiet and encrypted, waiting for the day he finally had enough. Waiting for the day they pushed him too far. The next afternoon, the Tastes of the South pitch was scheduled for 2 p.m. sharp. The client team was led by the director of the city's tourism board, 8 people in total, all serious, all sharp, all with the power to sign a 7-figure annual contract. This was a big account. A make-or-break account for the coming year. In the sleek, glass-walled conference room, Lila sat in the lead presenter's seat, wearing a crisp white tailored suit, the exact one she'd complained was too old and boring for her, when Ethan had helped her pick it out a month earlier. When she'd panicked because she had nothing professional to wear to the pitch. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, perfect bun, her makeup flawless, her posture straight. She looked every bit the rising star creative director she was pretending to be. Ethan sat to her right, a printed copy of the deck in front of him, a pen tucked behind his ear. Clara sat beside the client, leaning in every now and then to murmur a charming comment, warm and charismatic, working the room like she always did. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lila Hart, Associate Creative Director at Dusk and Dawn. Today, I'll be walking you through our integrated communication strategy for Tastes of the South. Lila's voice was clear, confident, perfectly pitched, just like she'd practiced in the mirror 100 times. The projector lit up. The first slide was the soft, inkwash-style key visual Ethan had spent 3 days refining, painting layer after layer of texture until it felt like breathing in southern summer air. Our core concept for this campaign, Lila said, clicking smoothly to the next slide, is homesickness on a plate, the economics of nostalgia. The clients leaned forward in their chairs, interested, nodding. Lila talked smoothly through every section, never stumbling, never pausing too long. Market analysis, audience insight, phased rollout, budget breakdown. Every slide was his. Every talking point was his. Every metaphor, every stat, every turn of phrase was his. She delivered it all flawlessly, even adding little personal touches here and there to make it sound like her own, like she'd lived every word of it. When she got to the section on middle-class urban nostalgia, she smiled softly, like she was sharing a secret. I moved to the city from a small southern town myself, you know? Every time I taste food from home, it hits different. It's not just food. It's childhood, it's family, it's a life you left behind. That's the feeling we want to tap into. That universal ache. The clients nodded, visibly impressed. The director even jotted a note down on his notepad. When she reached the key visual section, she gestured broadly to the screen. Ethan and I brainstormed this together for weeks, going back and forth on style, on tone, on the exact feeling we wanted to evoke. We landed on this inkwash look to really capture that soft, dreamy, nostalgic southern charm. Ethan sat silent, his fingers folded neatly in his lap, his face neutral. We brainstormed together. Nice phrasing. Vague enough to sound collaborative, specific enough to give her equal credit. He'd heard her use that exact line with 3 different clients now, for 3 different projects he'd written entirely on his own, without a single input from her. The deck moved forward, slide by slide, the minutes ticking by, until they hit slide 117. It was the most important slide in the whole deck, the social media amplification strategy. Ethan had designed a full short video challenge funnel, from micro-influencer seeding to user-generated content explosion to viral mainstream takeoff. It was the hook that would make the campaign spread, the part that would turn a solid, pretty tourism ad into a nationwide cultural conversation. It was the reason they would win the pitch. The text on the slide was half-finished. A bright yellow comment bubble sat dead in the middle of the page, bold and impossible to miss. For Lila to fill in KL list plus budget breakdown. We'll finalize tomorrow. Lila hadn't filled it in. She hadn't even read the comments. She hadn't even bothered to scroll through the full deck before the pitch. Ethan watched her pupils flare, just for a split second, wide with panic. Her smile didn't falter, not even a little bit. She clicked the mouse once, fast, so fast the slide transition blurred, and skipped straight to the next one. Now let's look at the overall project timeline and key milestones. No one on the client team seemed to notice. They were all taking notes, nodding along, impressed by the presentation. But Ethan saw. He saw the way her hand tightened around the clicker until her knuckles went white. He saw the faint, angry flush rise up her neck, under the collar of her blazer. He saw the split second of raw, unmasked panic she'd covered up with that perfect, practiced smile, so fast you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. Ethan's phone lit up on the table, face down, buzzing once. He flipped it over just enough to see the text from Clara, sent from 3 seats away. What happened to that slide? Why is it blank? Fix this later. He didn't reply. He just locked the screen and set it back down. The pitch ended 40 minutes later, to warm smiles and firm handshakes. The clients were thrilled. They said they loved the concept, loved the creative direction, and wanted to move forward with contract negotiations as early as the following week. Clara walked the group all the way to the elevator, laughing and chatting, warm and charismatic, every inch the perfect CEO. Just before the elevator doors slid closed, she glanced back over her shoulder at Ethan, still standing in the hallway. Her gaze was sharp, disapproving, and above all else, untouchable. Like she knew there was nothing he could do about it. Like she knew he'd take the blame for Lila's mistake, just like he always did, just like he'd done 100 times before. He knew there would be a talk that night. He knew exactly how it would go. By 7 p.m., most of the office had gone home. The hallways were quiet, the overhead lights dimmed to evening mode, casting long shadows across the walls. Clara's assistant, Zoe, stopped by Ethan's desk, holding a tablet, her expression neutral. "Ethan? Clara would like to see you in her office. She said it's about the pitch and your contract renewal." "Sure. Tell her I'll be right there." He saved his work, slipped his phone into his pocket, and walked down the hall to the corner office with the polished brass plaque that read founder and CEO. The door was open a crack, warm light spilling out into the hallway. Clara was sitting on the leather couch in the seating area, 2 cups of freshly brewed tea on the marble coffee table in front of her, steam curling up into the air. Lila was there too, perched on the edge of the armchair, tapping away at her iPad like she was diligently going over pitch notes. "Have a seat," Clara said, gesturing to the couch across from her, her smile warm and welcoming. Ethan sat. The tea was premium longing, probably a gift from a client. The steam curled up into the air, carrying a soft, grassy, floral scent. It smelled like money. "The pitch went really well overall," Clara said, getting straight to the point, as she always did. Her tone was pleasant, the way you sound when you're about to give someone bad news and wrap it in a compliment to soften the blow. The director absolutely loved the key visual. Said it perfectly captured that gentle, nostalgic vibe we were going for. "Great work on that front." "Good. But..." She paused, lifting her teacup slowly, her gaze steady. "That blank slide today. That was a careless, unprofessional mistake. We can't afford slip-ups like that with a client this important. This account could make or break our next year. This is exactly the kind of thing I'm worried about lately." Ethan met her gaze evenly, no anger in his voice, no defensiveness. "I tagged Lila in the group chat yesterday afternoon. I left a clear, bold comment right on that slide asking her to fill in the KL list and budget breakdown before the pitch." Lila set down her iPad immediately, her face wide with innocent, hurt surprise, like she couldn't believe he would accuse her of such a thing. "Ethan, I was swamped finishing the media plan for the beauty account last night. I didn't get a chance to check the project chat until this morning. And the comment. I just assumed you'd finish it yourself before the pitch. You're the lead on the project, after all. It's your responsibility to make sure the deck is final. Lead on the project." Ethan repeated the words slowly, tasting them. "Of course," Lila said, blinking big, wide eyes at him, like she was the wronged party here. "You wrote the whole thing. I'm just here to support, to present, to be the face of it with clients. I was telling Clara earlier, I don't know how you do it. You work so fast, I can barely keep up with your output. It's impressive." Clara held up a hand, cutting the conversation short, her tone final. "Enough. It's done. We won the account, that's what matters. Dwelling on mistakes doesn't help anyone. But going forward, I want better communication on this team. Ethan, you're our most senior creative. It's your job to lift up the newer team members, to set them up for success. Lila's talented, but she doesn't have your years of experience." "Of course," Lila chimed in, nodding eagerly, all smiles again now that the heat was off her. "I still have so much to learn from you. I really value your mentorship." Ethan sat there and watched them perform their little well-rehearsed duet, and felt that slow burn in his stomach get hotter, deeper, angrier. He'd seen this routine a dozen times by now. Lila made a mistake, Clara framed it as a team failure, Ethan took the fall. It was a well-oiled machine by now. And they both knew he'd never push back, never make a scene, never cause trouble. That was the whole point of him. He was reliable. He was quiet. He took it. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about," Clara said, setting her teacup down with a soft clink on the marble coaster, shifting into business mode. "Your contract is up next month. I had HR draft a renewal proposal. I wanted to walk you through it first, before it goes out officially, since you're a founding member. Here it comes. Go on." "We're adjusting the compensation structure company-wide for next year," she said, her voice soft, reasonable, like she was doing him a huge favor. "Base salary will stay the same on paper, but the performance bonus pool will be tied directly to individual project profitability. We're also moving to a competitive bid model for creative leads on all major projects. Obviously, I want you leading our biggest accounts, you know that, but we need to give younger talent a shot too. It's good for the company's image, and it keeps everyone sharp." Competitive bid model. Ethan said it flatly, like he was tasting a bad word. "That's right. For S-tier projects like the Urban Nomad project, anyone on the creative team can submit a pitch. Whoever has the strongest concept, the most viral potential, leads the campaign end to end." Clara looked him right in the eye, her gaze steady. "This is good for you, Ethan, honestly. Pressure drives creativity. I know you've been in a bit of a slump lately, probably from overwork. This way, you can pick your pace. If you don't want to take on the big, high-stakes projects, you can focus on our standardized product line. Lower stress, steady work. Standardized product line. The bottom of the barrel. Template work for small, low-budget clients. Generic social media posts, product detail pages, cookie-cutter copy for local businesses. Low pay, no creative growth. The quiet graveyard where creative careers go to die. Everyone in the company knew it. Also, Clara said, pulling a thick, stapled document out from under the coffee table, sliding it across the marble surface toward him, we're rolling out a new senior creative consultant role. It would focus on mentorship, building out our internal creative methodology, reviewing junior work. I think it would be a great fit for you right now, where you are in your career. The base pay is a little lower than the project model, but it's stable. Less stress. Better work-life balance. Ethan picked up the document. The cover read Dusk and Dawn Creative, Talent Pipeline Development Plan, Draft. The paper was thick, glossy, professionally printed. It looked official, thought out, inevitable. He flipped to the compensation section, his eyes scanning the numbers. Senior Creative Consultant, $3,500 per month. That was half of what he made now. Half. This is a demotion, he said flatly, no emotion in his voice. It's a career transition, Clara corrected him, her voice still pleasant, still reasonable, but her eyes had gone cold, hard, no warmth left in them. Ethan, let's be honest with each other. 35 is a turning point in this industry. It's not that you're not talented, you're one of the best writers I've ever worked with. It's that the market is changing. Clients want viral moments, social conversation, something that resonates with young people, with Gen Z. Lila and her generation get that intuitively. They grew up online. Your strength is classic creative craft, and that's valuable, don't get me wrong, but it can't carry the whole company anymore. Not in this climate. So what are you saying? He leaned forward a little, his elbows on his knees. I'm saying I want you to be realistic about where you are. Stay and shift into a mentorship role. Help us build the next generation. Or, she trailed off, leaving the sentence hanging in the air between them. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Or leave. The door is right there. Your choice. We both know you don't have other options. Lila sat quiet in the armchair, staring down at her iPad like she wasn't listening, but Ethan saw the tiny, satisfied smile tug at the corner of her mouth. The smile of someone watching their prey step right into the trap, slow and stupid and unsuspecting. She knew exactly what was happening. She'd probably helped plan it. Probably even pushed for it. Silence stretched across the room for a few long, heavy seconds. When will the formal contract be ready? Ethan asked, closing the document, setting it back down on the table. Next week, Clara said, her shoulders relaxing a little, like a weight had lifted off her, like she'd already won. Like she'd known all along he'd roll over and take it, just like he always did. HR will walk you through all the numbers, all the fine print. Don't worry, we take care of our people. Especially our founding team. Got it. I'll look it over then. He stood up, slipping his phone back into his pocket. Oh, and Clara? He paused at the door, his hand on the frame, not turning around. I noticed the award for the Urban Nomad project is in the front display case. The creative credit plaque, only Lila's name is on it. There was a beat of dead silence behind him. You know how industry awards work, Clara said, her voice cooler now, all pretense of warmth gone. Whoever presents the pitch gets the credit. That's standard practice. You know that. Got it. He opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, closing it softly behind him. His phone buzzed in his pocket, right on cue. An email from HR, right on schedule, proposed contract renewal, Ethan Voss. He opened it as he walked back to his desk, his shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. $3,500 base pay per month. 70% of total compensation tied to performance metrics, including mentorship outcomes and internal bid win rate. Metrics that were impossible to hit, designed to make his take-home pay even lower, designed to make him miserable, designed to make him quit. It wasn't a contract. It was a carefully worded, legally sound resignation letter, designed to make him walk away so they wouldn't have to fire him. So they could say he left on his own, that he couldn't keep up with the pace, that the younger talent was just better. So his reputation would take the hit, not theirs. He went back to his desk, sat down in his worn leather chair, and unlocked his encrypted folder. 743 audio files, neatly organized by date and topic, sat waiting like an army standing at attention, silent and ready. He started scrolling through them, from the very beginning, letting the memories wash over him. File 1. 3 years earlier, late evening, the company's 4th anniversary. Clara in her office, drinking cheap red wine with him, just the two of them, like the old days. They were both a little drunk, giddy with how far they'd come. Ethan, if it wasn't for you, dusk and dawn would be nothing. Half this company is yours. Always remember that. Always. Her voice was a little slurred, warm and sincere, but every word was crystal clear. Ethan hit pause, clipped the segment cleanly, and labeled it, Founder Verbal Commitment, 50% Company Ownership. 4th Anniversary Dinner. He kept scrolling, his thumb moving slowly over the trackpad. File 27. 2 years ago, annual all-hands meeting, the whole company packed into the main conference room. Clara, speaking to the whole team, bright and inspiring. Ethan is the backbone of dusk and dawn. When I'm not here, he speaks for me on all creative decisions. His judgment is final. File 198. 1 year ago, the auto account renewal celebration dinner at a fancy downtown restaurant. Clara had too much to drink, slung an arm around Ethan's shoulders, and said loud enough for the whole client table to hear, "You know who really wrote Between Mountain and Tide? Not the person who accepted the award. Him." She'd pointed right at Ethan, proud, like she was revealing a secret. The client had laughed, clapped him on the back, like it was a charming inside joke. Like it didn't matter. File 322. 6 months ago, a casual check-in between Clara and Lila, recorded from the hallway outside Clara's office. Ethan's work has been slipping lately. That last pitch felt phoned in. No edge, no spark. Lila's voice, cool and dismissive. He's probably burnt out. Maybe it's good for him to step back a little. Take on less high-stakes work. Clara's voice, agreeing, calm. Do you think he's resentful? He barely talks to the team anymore. He's always in his office alone. He's too loyal to the company to cause trouble. He's been here since the beginning. Besides, he needs us. Where else would he go? File 400. 3 months ago, Lila complaining to Clara after a team meeting. Clara, Ethan won't show me the core concept for the auto renewal pitch. He says it's not ready. I think he's hiding it on purpose. Lila, sounding hurt, victimized. He has his reasons. He's protective of his work. Don't worry. I'll talk to him. I'll make sure you get access. I think he's scared I'll take credit for it. A small, petty laugh. You're not taking credit. You're earning your spot. In this industry, if you don't fight for what's yours, someone else will take it. You have every right to be in that room. File 500. 2 months ago, Clara on a call with the head of legal, her voice low and businesslike. For Ethan's renewal contract, I want to add a clause. All creative work produced during his employment, past and future, full intellectual property and attribution rights belong exclusively to the company. No individual creative credit, no moral rights claims. He might not go for that. He cares a lot about credit. It could get messy. He will. He doesn't have any other options. He'll sign whatever we put in front of him. Ethan closed the audio folder, leaning back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling. The office was dead silent, so quiet he could hear the hum of the fridge in the kitchen down the hall. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Huaihai Road glowed with neon light, streaking past like blood through veins, endless and bright and moving too fast. This city was always young, always hungry, always throwing away anyone it decided was past their prime, anyone who couldn't keep up with the pace. And he, a 35-year-old copywriter, had just been labeled obsolete. Just like all the work he'd poured his heart and soul into, work that Lila Hart had picked up, wiped her name on, and called her own, like it was nothing. He opened his email client, started a new message, his fingers hovering over the keyboard for a second. In the recipient line, he typed one address after another, slowly, carefully, making sure he didn't miss anyone. 5 key client contacts, 3 longtime industry journalists, the editors of 2 major creative trade publications, all of the company's primary investors, every one of Clara's major business partners. 17 addresses total. 17 people who mattered. 17 people who could make or break the company's reputation. He typed the subject line, slow and deliberate, a statement on Dusk and Dawn Creative's internal practices and the true authors of multiple award-winning campaigns. The cursor blinked in the body of the email, a tiny black line, waiting. He thought about it for a long minute, staring at it. Then he saved it as a draft, closed the window. Not yet. He was waiting for one final push. He wanted to see just how far they'd go. How much dignity they'd let him keep. How low they'd make him bow before they were satisfied. The annual awards gala was 2 days away. He'd have his answer then. In those 2 days leading up to the gala, Ethan showed up to work like nothing was wrong. Like he hadn't just been handed a demotion and a pay cut. Like he hadn't just found out his best friend and business partner was actively trying to push him out. He went to meetings, revised decks, answered emails, gave feedback to junior creatives. Everything normal. Everything fine. Lila had already started acting like the interim creative director, swanning around the office like she owned the place. She announced at the weekly team meeting that she would be leading 3 S-tier projects the following year, the biggest accounts on the roster. Ethan will be on board as a consultant, she said, smiling sweetly at him from the head of the table, like she was doing him a huge favor. To oversee the big picture, to lend his expertise. It'll be great to have his support. Everyone at the table looked at Ethan, waiting for him to push back. Waiting for him to say no, to assert himself, to remind everyone who actually ran the creative department, who'd built this whole thing. He just nodded, calm as can be. Whatever you think is best, Lila. Lila blinked, clearly caught off guard by how easily he'd agreed. She'd probably been ready with a whole speech, a whole list of reasons why it was a good idea, why he should be grateful. Then her smile came back, wider than ever, triumphant. Great. Having you there to back me up takes so much pressure off. I know I can count on you. Clara sat at the head of the table, watching them both, a faint, amused smile on her face. Like she was watching a play she'd written herself. Like she was proud of how well her plan was working, how neatly everything was falling into place. After the meeting, Quentin Marsh caught up to Ethan in the hallway, pulling him off to the side by his elbow. He lowered his voice, glancing over his shoulder like he was afraid someone would hear them, like walls had ears. Ethan, you're not actually going to sign that contract, are you? What contract? Ethan played dumb, just for a second. The renewal one. Come on. We both know what it is. It's a push out the door. A fancy, polite one, but a push all the same. Quentin had been with the company for 5 years, hired as a junior accountant straight out of college, bright and nervous and barely able to fill out an expense report. Ethan had trained him, walked him through every client budget, taught him how to negotiate with vendors, how to stand his ground with Clara when she wanted to blow the budget on fancy office parties. Now he was the head of finance, the most reliable, most honest person in the whole company. Ethan smiled a little, a faint, tired smile. It's not just pushing me out. It's worse than that. But you'll see. Quentin opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, like he wanted to ask what he meant, then just clapped Ethan on the shoulder, hard and firm. Whatever you decide, I get it. For what it's worth. You deserve better than this. Then he turned and walked away, back toward the finance department. His shoulders looked heavy. Ethan watched him go, and thought about 5 years ago, when Quentin was new, nervous, fumbling his way through expense reports, apologizing for every little mistake. He thought about the year-end bonus Clara had given Quentin this year, $5,500. For running the entire finance department, for keeping the whole company afloat. $92,000 for Lila, for showing up to meetings and taking credit. 5.5 for the man who kept the whole company's finances from falling apart, who worked just as many late nights, who cared just as much. That angered him more than his own $1,200 bonus. More than his own demotion. More than any of the insults they'd thrown his way. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of them. All the quiet, hard-working people who never got the credit, never got the money, never got the spotlight, while people like Lila walked away with all the rewards. The night of the gala, Ethan put on a dark charcoal suit he'd had tailored 3 years earlier for a client wedding. It wasn't designer, but it was well-cut, clean, sharp, fit him perfectly. Before he left the apartment, he stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time, shaved carefully, combed his hair back neat and tidy. He looked like himself. Calm. Prepared. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. On his phone, the scheduled email was set and locked, encrypted, impossible to stop once the timer ran out. In his suit pocket, a small, plain USB drive, thin enough to barely feel. On it, a curated selection of 99 audio files, 6 hours and 40 minutes total, covering every conversation Clara and Lila had ever had about him, every plan, every lie, every stolen idea, every insult. Every single thing they'd said when they thought he couldn't hear them. Also on the drive, a comprehensive PDF, 30 pages long. A full, itemized list of 27 projects over the past 3 years, projects Ethan had written from start to finish, projects Lila had taken full public credit for. Every entry had screenshots of the shared server edit history, his original file archives, timestamps that couldn't be faked or altered. Proof, undeniable proof, line by line, revision by revision. He scrolled to the last page of the PDF, just to check, one last time. The Urban Nomad Project. Key concept document created, April 17, 2023, 10:37 p.m. Created by Ethan Voss. Final file edit history, Ethan Voss, 83 revisions, all creative content. Lila Hart, for revisions, all formatting and font changes. Official Industry Award Creative Credit, Lila Hart. Performance bonus awarded, $92,000. He locked his phone, slipped it back into his pocket, grabbed his coat, and walked out the door. The taxi dropped him off at the hotel entrance 10 minutes later. There was a long line for check-in, people in tailored suits and floor-length gowns, holding glasses of champagne, laughing and networking and taking photos for social media. The huge branded backdrop by the entrance read Dusk and Dawn Creative Annual Gala and Partner Appreciation Night in shiny gold lettering. Lila was standing by the check-in desk in a floor-length sequined gown, sparkling under the string lights, surrounded by a small group of junior creatives hanging on her every word. She saw him walk up, lifted her chin, and smirked, slow and smug. "You clean up nice, Ethan. Almost look like you belong here. Thanks." He signed his name on the sheet, took his name tag, and walked straight into the ballroom without another word. It was already packed inside. Employees, clients, journalists, vendors, industry people from all over the city. Clara had turned a simple year-end company party into a full-blown industry event, a showcase for how successful and forward-thinking Dusk and Dawn was. Ethan's seat was at the very back table, tucked in the corner by the kitchen doors, with a handful of vendors and a few wide-eyed new interns. The table was the smallest in the room, the chairs slightly less nice, the view of the stage partially blocked by a pillar. One of the interns looked up at him when he sat down, flustered, like she couldn't believe he was sitting there. "Ethan? I thought you'd be at the head table. With Clara and everything. Why's that?" He sat down with a small, gentle smile, unfolding his napkin. "Because, you're like the main creative guy. The one who writes all the good stuff. The head table's for the winners," he said, his voice steady, no bitterness in it. Just a statement of fact. The intern nodded, still confused, still like she thought there had been a mistake with the seating chart. At 6:30 sharp, the house lights dimmed and the awards ceremony started. The bright spotlight hit the stage and Clara walked up to the podium to give the opening speech. She talked about vision, about creativity, about building something that lasted, about lifting up young voices. Creativity is the most valuable resource in the world, she said, her voice ringing out clear and true through the speakers. And at dusk and dawn, we make that value matter. We honor it. We reward it. The room erupted in applause, loud and warm. Then the awards started rolling out, one after another. Rookie of the Year, Best Collaboration, Client Service Excellence, Most Improved. One by one, bright-eyed young people walked up to the stage, grinning, holding their little trophies and their red envelopes. Bonuses ranged from $700 to $7,000, modest but meaningful. When they got to the Annual Diligence Award, Quentin paused for a full second at the microphone. He glanced out into the crowd, found Ethan's face in the back, and looked away again, almost guilty. He looked like he hated every second of this. "Ethan Voss," he said, his voice a little tighter than usual. "Bonus, $1,200. The words hung in the air, light and weightless as feathers, landing soft and heavy all at once. Ethan stood up, smooth and calm. Every head in the room turned toward him, all at once, like a school of fish changing direction. He could hear the whispers start, quiet at first, then louder, rippling through the tables. 1,200. 92,000 for Lila, 1,200 for him? That can't be right. That's messed up. After everything he's done. He walked up the steps to the stage slowly, his shoes clicking on the wood, and took the thin red envelope from Clara's hand. She stood there, smiling that perfect, polished, unreadable smile. "Keep up the good work," she said, quiet enough that only he could hear. There was an edge to it, almost a warning. "Know your place." "I will," he said, just as quiet. Then he turned and walked back down the steps, back to his table in the back, without looking at anyone. Next up, the big one, Campaign of the Year. Quentin named the 3 finalists, building the tension, then took a deep breath like he was bracing himself. Gold Award winner, the Urban Nomad Project. Creative lead, Lila Hart. Lila stood up slowly, dramatic, like she'd practiced the move 100 times. Her gown swept the floor in a glittering arc, catching the light. She walked up to the stage, slow and graceful, took the heavy crystal trophy from Clara, and blinked back perfectly timed tears, like she was so overcome with emotion she could barely speak. Thank you so much," she said, her voice wobbly with perfect, performative emotion. "This project means so much to me, more than I can say. I've always loved traveling, finding the little hidden moments, the quiet magic in every city. I wanted to make something that made people see the beauty right in front of them. That's always been my mission as a creative." She didn't say his name. Not once. Not even a throwaway, thanks to the team. Not even a hint that anyone else had been involved. Like the whole thing had sprung fully formed from her head, like she'd dreamed it up out of nowhere. After the awards ceremony ended, dinner was served. The room got loud again, glasses clinking, people laughing, music playing soft and low in the background. Clients lined up to congratulate Lila, to shake her hand, to talk about future projects, to sing her praises. She was the star of the night. Ethan sat in the back, picking at his steak, quiet, observing. He wasn't hungry. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. He pulled it out under the table, glanced at the screen. Scheduled send. 15 minutes. That's when Clara walked over, holding a glass of red wine, her heels clicking on the carpet. She sat down beside him, her posture perfect, her voice warm and reasonable, like they were old friends having a chat. "Ethan, I hope you understand why we did this tonight. The company needs to show the industry that we're evolving, that we're growing new talent, that we're not stuck in the past. This isn't personal. It's business." Ethan looked her right in the eye, his face calm. 7 years ago, you said something to me in that basement office. Do you remember? What? Her brow furrowed, just a little. You said, "Ethan, let's build the best creative boutique in the country. Together." Clara's eyes flickered, just for a split second, like she was remembering it too, like she could almost see that cold basement, those wobbly desks, that terrible instant coffee. Then the look was gone, replaced by cool, professional composure. That was 7 years ago. The market changes. The company has to change with it. We can't stay in the basement forever. It's not just the market that changed, he said, quiet but clear. It's you. Her smile faltered, just a little, the mask slipping for half a second. That's when Lila walked over, holding 2 glasses of champagne, her trophy tucked under one arm like a prize. She handed one to Clara, her eyes still glistening a little from her acceptance speech, like she was still riding the high. Clara, thank you, she said, sincere as can be. None of this would have happened without you. You believed in me when no one else did. Clara took the glass and took a small, slow sip. Lila turned to Ethan, her smile sharp and sweet at the same time, patronizing, like she was talking to a child who'd tried their best and lost. You too, Ethan. I hope you keep putting in the work, keep trying. I'd love to learn more from you next year. If you're still around. Ethan looked at her. And then he smiled. A small, calm, knowing smile. Lila, he said, quiet but clear, loud enough for the people at the nearby tables to hear. Do you know where the core concept for the Urban Nomad project actually came from? I wrote it at 3 in the morning, in a 24-hour diner downtown, after pulling an all-nighter on the auto account. I'd just gotten out of a 4-year relationship. I was sitting there drinking cold coffee, and it just came to me. Her smile froze on her face, stiff as plastic. Do you know that line everyone loves? The one about every city having a light that's waiting for you? I wrote it for my ex, the night she moved out. You didn't change a single word. You just put your name on it. You told clients it came to you in the shower. What are you talking about? Lila's voice rose, sharp and defensive, loud enough that a few more heads turned. That's ridiculous. I wrote that. People at the nearby tables went quiet. They started turning to look, setting down their forks and glasses, curious. I'm saying, Ethan said, standing up slowly, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room, loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear, that you're a thief. A very polished, very entitled, very well-connected thief. You steal other people's work, you take bonuses you didn't earn, you stand up on that stage and take credit for light that was never yours. For work you didn't write, for ideas you never had. The whole ballroom went dead quiet, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. A waiter dropped a tray of champagne flutes somewhere in the back, and the crash sounded deafening in the silence. No one laughed. No one spoke. Clara shot to her feet, her face tight with barely contained anger, leaning in to hiss at him. Ethan, that's enough. You're making a scene. Control yourself. I'm not making a scene, he said, his voice steady, unshaken. He pulled the small USB drive out of his breast pocket and held it up high between his thumb and forefinger so everyone could see it, so it caught the chandelier light. This has 3 years of audio recordings. Every conversation where you told investors Ethan Voss is past his prime and needs to be pushed out. Every time Lila admitted the work was mine, that she'd only changed a few words, that she'd taken the credit. Every plan you made to restructure my contract, take away my creative credit, and force me out of the company I helped build from nothing. And this, he said, lifting his phone in his other hand, tapping the screen once to wake it up, is a full PDF report. 27 projects. Every one I wrote end to end, every one Lila took public credit for. Server timestamps, edit history, original drafts, all of it. Irrefutable. This email, he glanced at the screen, calm as can be in 13 minutes, goes out to 17 people. Every key client. Every industry publication. All your investors. Every business partner you have. Everyone who matters. You're insane, Clara whispered. Her face had gone pale, all the color draining out of her cheeks. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You'll destroy the company. You'll destroy everything we built. I know exactly what I'm doing, he said. I'm taking back my credit. I'm taking back the work that's mine. That's all. Credit. Lila let out a sharp, shaky, disbelieving laugh. Her hands were trembling now, her champagne glass sloshing a little. Company policy says the lead presenter gets creative credit. That's industry standard. You're a grown man, a senior creative, fighting a junior employee for recognition. Don't you feel embarrassed? Don't you have any pride? Embarrassed? Ethan turned to her, his voice steady and sharp, cutting through her like a knife. The embarrassing thing is stealing someone else's life's work. The embarrassing thing is standing on that stage, lying to hundreds of people, wearing a trophy you didn't earn, giving speeches about a vision you never had. That's embarrassing. That's what's shameful. Stop it. Clara snapped, reaching out like she was going to grab his phone. She leaned in, her voice urgent and low, for only him to hear, all pretense gone. Ethan, cancel the email right now. Hit pause. We can talk about this. Whatever you want. You want credit? You can have it. All the credit you want. You want a raise? Name your number. We can fix this. We don't have to destroy each other over this. Think of everything we built. Destroy each other? He looked at her, and suddenly he was just tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the games, tired of 7 years of being the good soldier who never complained, who always took one for the team, who always put the company first. Clara. For 3 years, I gave you chance after chance. After chance. Every meeting, every pitch, every client dinner. I waited. I waited for you to say it. To say, this is Ethan's work. He did this. He deserves this. You never did. Not once. You just kept taking. Kept using me. Kept letting her take credit for my work. Kept letting her climb the ladder on my back. $1,200 bonus. A 50% pay cut. A dead-end consultant job. You couldn't even give me the dignity of an honest goodbye. You had to lie and manipulate and push me out like I was dead weight. And now you want to talk? Now you want to negotiate? He shook his head, slow and sad. It's too late. He tapped the screen of his phone once with his thumb. Send now. Sent, he said, holding the screen up so she could see the confirmation, the little check mark. From this second on, every client, every reporter, every investor you work with is going to know the truth about Dusk and Dawn Creative. About the award-winning work no one knows the real author of. About how you treat the people who built your company for you. The ballroom was silent. Dead silent. You could hear a breath catch somewhere in the crowd. Clara stared at his phone, her face as white as a sheet, like she was waiting for an undo button to appear, like she thought if she stared hard enough, the email would come back. It didn't. Lila was fully panicking now, grabbing Clara's arm, her voice high and tight, shrill with fear. Clara, what did he send? What about my trophy? What about my bonus? They can't take it back, right? They can't. Shut up, Clara snapped, yanking her arm away so hard Lila stumbled back a step. Her voice was sharp, broken, nothing like her usual polished, calm tone. All the mask was gone now. Then she turned back to Ethan. Her eyes were red, glistening. She was actually crying. Real tears for the first time in 7 years. Ethan, she said, her voice shaking, thick with tears. After everything. After all these years. Was it worth it? Ruining everything we built, just to get even. Ethan looked at her. He thought about 7 years ago, her in a messy ponytail, carrying 2 tattered copies of the Archive Annual under her arm, showing up at his tiny basement apartment, breathless with excitement, saying, "Let's start a company. I have the clients, you have the talent. We're going to be the best. We're going to change the industry." He thought about 5 years ago, her standing in their first real office, writing Dusk and Dawn on the cinder block wall in white chalk, grinning like an idiot, saying, "Someday everyone in this industry will know this name. We'll make history." He thought about 3 years ago, her drunk at a client dinner, crying on his shoulder in the taxi ride home about how hard the investors were pushing her, how she couldn't keep up, how scared she was of failing. "I've got you," he'd said. "Always. We're in this together." He thought about 2 years ago, the new office, the new assistant, the new investors, the way she started looking at him like he was a tool, not a partner. Like he was a resource to be used up and thrown away. He thought about a year ago, when Lila was hired, the way Clara had lit up when she talked about her, like she'd found a newer, shinier version of him. He thought about 6 months ago, when she first said, "Ethan, think of the bigger picture. Don't be petty about credit." He thought about 2 months ago, when she said, "The industry changes. You have to change too. Or you get left behind." He thought about a week ago, when she offered him half his salary and a dead-end job, and thought he'd take it. Thought he'd be grateful. He thought about tonight, when she handed him $1,200 and called it a reward for 7 years of his life. "Yeah," he said, quiet but sure. "It was worth it." He picked up the thin red $1,200 envelope from the table, tore it clean in half with one sharp, steady motion, and dropped the 2 pieces next to her heavy crystal trophy, sitting there on the white tablecloth. "Clara," he said, his voice calm, even like he was commenting on the weather, "this mess? It's not my problem anymore. And it's not yours either, not really. It's yours to fix. Good luck with it." Then he turned and walked out of the ballroom, without looking back, past all the staring faces, past the quiet whispers, out into the hallway. The cold night air hit him in the face when he stepped out of the hotel's revolving door, sharp and clean and fresh, filling his lungs. He stood on the sidewalk for a minute, just breathing, watching the cars go by, watching people laugh and walk past on their way to other parties, other nights. He'd expected to feel angry. He'd expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, high on revenge. Instead, he just felt light. Like a weight he'd been carrying for 3 years, heavy and cold and sharp, had finally slid off his shoulders and fallen to the ground. Like he could breathe again, for the first time in a very long time. He put his hands in his coat pockets and started walking down the street, toward the subway station, slow and easy. He didn't know exactly what came next. He didn't have a 5-year plan. He didn't have another job lined up. But for the first time in a long time, that felt okay. That felt like freedom. 3 months later, Ethan had rented a small, sunlit office in another building on Huaihai Road, just a few blocks from the old villa. It was only 130 square feet, cramped and a little bit shabby, but the big window looked out over a row of tall plane trees, their leaves green and thick and rustling in the summer sun. His new company was called Attributive Creative. There were 3 of them total. 3 people, 1 vision. The fallout from the email had been bigger than anyone expected, bigger than even Ethan had anticipated. 3 of Dusk and Dawn's biggest clients had pulled their accounts within a week, citing misalignment with company values. The Regional Industry Awards Association had rescinded Lila's trophy and launched a full, industry-wide review of their attribution and crediting policies. Clara had stepped down as CEO 6 weeks later, released a vague, carefully worded public statement about stepping back to spend time with family and pursue other projects. Lila had left the company a month after that, deleted all her social media profiles. No one had heard from her since. Ethan didn't take any pleasure in any of it. It wasn't about revenge. It was never about revenge. It was about being honest. About the work speaking for itself and the person who made the work getting to put their name on it. About basic decency. Quentin was the first to join his new team. He'd quit his job as head of finance at Dusk and Dawn 2 weeks after the gala and signed on as a full partner, handling all the operations and finance stuff Ethan hated. Couldn't stand doing Lila's expense reports anymore, he'd said, grinning, when he showed up at Ethan's apartment with a box of his stuff. Every time I calculated the taxes on that $92,000 bonus, I felt like I was aiding and abetting grand theft. No amount of severance was worth that. The third person was Maya Torres. She'd been an intern at Dusk and Dawn, trained directly by Ethan, sharp as a tack and fiercely honest, then left for another agency a year earlier for better pay and more opportunity. When she saw the industry articles about what had happened, when she heard he was starting his own shop, she quit her job the next day and showed up at his door with a backpack and a laptop. "I remember the first thing you ever taught me, on my first day," she'd said, when he asked her why she'd left a stable job to join a 2-person startup with no clients. "What's that?" He'd laughed, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Creativity can fail. It can flop. It can miss the mark. But it never gets to lie. It never gets to pretend to be something it's not. It never gets to steal someone else's voice." Ethan had smiled at that. He'd known then that they were going to build something good. That afternoon, The three of them were crammed into the tiny office's even tinier conference nook, brainstorming their first official client pitch for a small, independent bookstore chain. Maya wrote ideas in bright marker on the portable whiteboard, Quentin ran budget numbers on his laptop, muttering to himself, and Ethan stood by the window holding a cup of black coffee, watching the leaves blow in the wind. Sunlight filtered through the plane tree leaves, dappling the scuffed table with gold. The air smelled like fresh coffee and cheap printer ink and summer air coming through the open window. It was small and quiet and a little bit messy, and the chairs were all secondhand. It was perfect. His phone rang on the table, buzzing against the wood. An unknown number with a magazine area code. Hello. Hi, Mr. Voss. This is Elena Pierce from Cityscape Magazine, the Culture and Creative Industries desk. We were hoping to schedule an interview with you about creative attribution rights in advertising. About your story. Ethan paused, his fingers tightening slightly around his coffee mug. Creative attribution? Yes. There's been a huge, industry-wide conversation lately about credit for creative work, about ghostwriting in agencies, about stolen concepts and erased credits. We looked into what happened at dusk and dawn, and it's far from an isolated case. It's systemic. Every agency does it to some degree, and no one talks about it. We're doing a deep dive feature, 10 pages, and we'd love to center your story. To put a face to the issue. Ethan was quiet for a few seconds, thinking. Outside the window, the plane trees rustled in the wind, soft and steady. Sure, he said. Pick a time. My assistant will coordinate. He hung up the phone, set it back down on the table. Maya looked up from the whiteboard, marker in her hand, curious. Everything okay? Who is that? Fine, he said. He set down his coffee mug, picked up a black marker, and walked over to the whiteboard. Just someone finally asking the right question. What question? Quentin looked up from his laptop, pushing his glasses up his nose. Whose name belongs on the work? He wrote 3 words on the board in big, clear, bold letters, right at the top. Creative attribution matters. Then he turned to face Maya and Quentin, a faint, determined smile on his face. All right, let's get back to this pitch. We're going to make it the best work we've ever done. Every line, every slide, every idea. Why? Maya asked, tilting her head, already smiling like she knew the answer. Because this time, he said, glancing at the 3 words on the board, then back at his team, his partners, every single name on it will be earned. Every single one.